Welcome to Two Brothers Talking. I'm Israel.
And I'm Eli.
Today, joining us again is Mayor Nicholls. 2 years ago, we had him on the podcast. We talked about life before the mayorship, life currently, what's going on in the pandemic. So we wanted to sit down and catch up 2 years later and see what he's up to. So, Mr. Mayor, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So how are you and the family doing?
Actually, we're doing quite well. Things continue to move forward, obviously, with everyone else's family. But some great things have happened this last year. We've been very fortunate. There hasn't been anything catastrophic. So we're pretty blessed.
That's amazing to hear. I remember seeing a post about two of your sons going off to college this past, school year. Is that correct?
They were in year 4 and year 5 of their college careers. One graduated and is prepping for med school, and the other one's just finishing up his degree. So, yeah, it's I got 2 more. I got one starting locally at AWC, and then one left in high school.
Certainly proud dad moments all around, right?
Definitely, they're amazing kids. We're really blessed. I haven't really ever been anything we've had, not to say I have to worry about. You always worry about your kids, but nothing on the big scale. So it's very good.
That's great to hear. Well, let's go back. I mean, because it's been 2 years now. What kind of hobbies did you maybe pick up over the last couple of years?
Wow, hobbies. Well, I started doing masterclass. I don't know if you've seen that. It's actually an app you can get on your phone, and those have been fun when I can find topics that I'm interested in. Usually I go for my 2-mile walk and catch a couple episodes on that. And then I'm just starting to get back into woodworking and that kind of thing. That's kind of hampered by the lack of garage space, which hopefully will be cleared up soon. But creating something with my hands is something that I've always enjoyed doing.
There's nothing more fulfilling than putting out that finished product where you put in the man hours, put in the sweat and sometimes the tears over the hammer hits on the thumb.
Well,
that's amazing.
There's that, and then there's always it didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. Kind of, okay, now what are we going to do moments. But that's part of the it being a hobby, or it being something you have to work at, getting better and better.
I always have extra parts, and so I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. But
save those. What's what I've learned is you save those because you're never sure. They might become necessary, a day later or a year.
Were these
or two
extra
later.
due to shipping? Were these extra because I didn't do it right?
They're just being kind and sending you extras.
Yeah. Am I just really that good at putting this together? I didn't need all the parts.
Right.
It's probably what it was.
It's never that, though. It's never that.
Oh, man.
So looking over the course of the pandemic, if you would, what would you say is your administration's biggest accomplishment?
I think it has a lot to do with supporting the community, trying to find those things that we could do to help. Early on, we were really short on PPE. That was the big word. Magically, everyone knew what PPE meant, or at least what it generally means. And we had a dramatic shortage. And so by reaching out to our school districts who had, the schools had already been shut down, so they didn't really need the PPE, at least in the short term. And so being able to connect them up with the fire departments and the police departments and the medical professionals that desperately needed, the gloves and the cleaning supplies and those kind of things. That was good. Those are the kind of things we looked for. We try to help our businesses with some of the grant funding to bridge, when they were closed. It never was enough to make anyone completely whole, but hopefully it helped create at least enough confidence with the business owners that we were there for them. We tried to do what we could do, and we'd get through it together as a community. And I think for the most part, we've done that pretty well economically. But towards the end, really what it came down to was our healthcare workers. Not that it's over, but I mean, towards the end of that initial big push, really understanding that our healthcare workers were really overworked, understaffed, those kind of things, and in very precarious situation. So developed Adopt a Nurse program, which brought together business people and philanthropic efforts to provide just little creature comforts for those that were working in the hospital or at some of the clinics around the area, whether that was lunch or coffee or, Gatorade or Powerade or, whatever it was. It's just something for the community to say, hey, we appreciate everything you're doing. We know you have a tough job. The days of baking cookies at home and dropping them off at the hospital, that wasn't going to happen. We couldn't throw a party for them at the park because they were busy working. So trying to do something that let them know they weren't on their own, I hopefully was helpful to them, but it gave the community something else to get behind. So I think those are the kind of examples of the things that I think we did as a city to really do what we could. We don't have a health department. We don't have the ability to really dive into research and all that other stuff. So we did what cities do have the ability to do, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a lot of unforeseens that came out of, like I said, the big kind of push. And especially in the beginning, I feel like it was a lot of, we're going to kind of figure this out as we go. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of moving parts. I don't think a lot of people suspected would be involved in everything that was happening.
Right. You can say it. There was a panic at the beginning. I mean, we just didn't know. We didn't know what we were facing. We didn't know how bad it was going to get. And so I believe people did what they thought was right, whatever leadership level they were at. As a politician or a leader of anything during that early time, it's brutal. It actually kind of still is, but it was very brutal because there was never going to be a right answer.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough information to have a right answer. But, overreacting is almost as damaging as underreacting. And so we kept pivoting and trying to find the right way forward. And, I think there was some give and take and a lot of frustration, a lot of panic. And I think, as a community, I think we found our way through that pretty solidly.
Yeah. Well, in hindsight being the 2020 that it is, Lord knows I've learned that lesson more than once.
Can we call it 2021 that it is?
Right. Hindsight being 2021.
Yeah.
What would you, now that we get to look back on everything, what would you change based on what we know now? Would there be anything you'd do different? Of course we have like if I could wave a magic wand, everyone would just get better.
Right.
But
sure.
What would we do different that would be applicable?
Well, that's a really tough question. Because again, I don't know that we really know cause and effect and how things would end up being, end up transpiring. You have examples. If you look worldwide, some countries completely locked down and they were still decimated, and other countries were nearly completely open and they were fine. And then you had the reverse. So I'm not even sure we know exactly what the right path would have been had we had all the answers up front, because I think it's still coming together. It's I don't even know really how to answer that one at this point. Maybe in 10 years we can come back and look at this and say, this would be the right path forward. But in reality, from a leadership, or I guess maybe more of a legalistic point of view, the governor stepped up. He took control of the situation, but by doing that, prohibited pretty much everyone else from doing it. So, I get a lot of questions. Why are you doing this? And we're not doing it. We're doing it because we're directed by the state. He's taken his lumps in that process. You can argue, rightfully or wrongfully, and I think it's probably on an issue per issue basis. But I really think, our economy's been pretty strong. And I think we're bouncing back really, really strong. And some of our numbers in-house, like tax revenues and such, are to the point where they've exceeded or met the previous year non-pandemic numbers. So I think when you keep people at home and they have to spend money in town, I think that's a big issue. It's the example of what we always talk about. Buy local. You want to buy from your local merchant, even if it's online. if you're buying from your local merchant, you're supporting them and you're keeping those dollars being recirculated in the community. So I've always been a buy local person. That just kind of doubled down on that, seeing as how the economy has worked. But then we've even done things like on the PAC, the Pacific Avenue Athletic Complex. We didn't completely shut it down for a long period of time. We did right there in the heat of it, but then we slowly opened that back up, with very low numbers at first, but that kept outside dollars coming in for our hotels and for our restaurants. And because they were low numbers, I don't see the impact on the COVID numbers, but we definitely saw it on those restaurants that were struggling and on the hotels that had, were struggling too. So, we try to thread that needle. Should have we done more? Should we have done less? I don't have that quite figured out yet.
Yeah, I don't know that there's going to be a right answer to that one. Like I said, maybe even not in 10 years. Because one thing that surprised me was I saw some business, like you said, I saw some businesses struggle. I know a couple shut down, unfortunately. Yeah. But I was surprised to see a couple actually come up. A couple get started. A number of people, in fact, we even know a couple, at least one that I remember, that actually started doing things like the DoorDash and the Uber driving
right.
On the side of their normal employment. It's like, oh wow, that's even more like local hiring and local jobs right there. That's surprisingly a benefit that kind of like the diamond in the rough a little bit from our local economy.
Exactly. And those that did better are the ones that looked for those other opportunities and just didn't say, hey, this is the way I've always done it, and if it's not working that way, you're causing me to fail. Those that opened up their eyes and said, hey, we have a different reality. Let's figure out how we're going to work within the reality. One of my favorite stories, and I won't mention the name only because I try not to promote particular businesses, but this business owner is really smart. It restaurant that did primarily food, not a whole lot of liquor, although he did have a liquor license. Well, realizing that liquor could go home, he pivoted a bit and started promoting some of that takeout liquor to be consumed at home, and really changed his business model, and it really helped him get through the pandemic in flying colors. Actually, he has done quite well. So I think and life's like that, right? Generally, it's not a pandemic that strikes you that makes you have to rethink things, but having to rethink the way you do business, the way you live your life is part of, robust living.
That's one of the things I like the most about Yuma community. One, we band together when we need to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But two, we adapt really well. When things are thrown our way, we adjust to whatever is coming our way. So you mentioned, the governor made some decisions that kind of maybe took some of the local decision away from you. So how did you adapt as a leader? How did your leadership style change to continue leading Yuma?
Well, what it came down to there was more of an advocacy role. I got our businesses together in the different groups, restaurants and bars and, haircutters and barbers. And we did these focus groups where we talked about, okay, at first is how could we propose to the governor those things that would make their businesses safe, that the governor could understand that that's how we're going to operate, and they can reopen. So we spent a lot of time focusing on getting that input, not being the expert in the room, being the listener in the room, getting that input, putting it together, getting it up to the governor and to his staff for consideration. Gyms, that was another big one. And what I found is, I think our businesses, we're doing a pretty good job to begin with. You go to a gym, it's rare you don't find a cleaning towel in a spray bottle somewhere, and that was pre-pandemic. So it became about that. It became about championing for local business, looking for ways to, when we got the first group of CARES Act funding, finding a way to pivot that and get it into the hands of the businesses that had been impacted by the closure orders. I didn't spend a lot of time looking for someone to blame for stuff. Reality is the way it is. We need to find paths forward and finding ways to try to do that while sympathizing with those that are struggling. My business, I'm an engineering firm. We don't have people coming in and out of our door all day. We do big projects and we email them out, so we weren't in that role, but understanding that, local stores and local businesses, what their struggle was extremely important. And then trying to synthesize that into what was digestible, for the governor, for whoever, the CDC, to understand why we believe the businesses could get back and up and operating. Because, it's a tough thing, and I'm not arguing the science at all, but you tell people to isolate and you tell them there's this pandemic that's going to kill you, and then you take away their job and you take away all their interaction. At some point, we have a mental capacity, and eventually, some of us are not gonna weather that well. So I think that was a big concern on mine, was how do we support mental health of the community, and a lot of it has to do try to provide as much normalcy as we could while still protecting the community. And that was really a lot of the reasons we kept as much as we could, the golf courses and the outdoor activities open and operating to whatever levels we could determine was as effective as we could be and safe. So I guess that's kind of how we pivoted. It wasn't really about striking new ground and leading new direction. It was about how do we work with the concerns we have and address them compassionately and with the access we do have. I mean, I've got great access to the governor's office. So my job is to use that for the people of Yuma, and we did that as best we could. Unfortunately, the governor's office was pretty well overwhelmed with a lot of input, but we did get to where we needed to get everyone open.
Well, and if there was ever a delicate line to walk, it was probably that one.
Yes,
So I mean, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to try and take on.
Yeah, I did a lot of head scratching. I can't say there was a playbook for this one at all. I just always try to step back and think, if roles were reversed, what would I want to see? Mm-hmm. Basically, people want to be heard. They want to know they're not fighting it alone. Sometimes it's just out of your hands, but having somebody in your corner, it's much easier to go through the tough times than doing it by yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, being in that position, right? Like you mentioned, sometimes your hands are tied, sometimes decisions are made for you, and sometimes you make the best decision you can with what you have. Mm-hmm. Not everybody sees it that way, and there's always going to be critics. So how do you deal with the pressure of critics, and does that play a factor in or an influence in how you choose to lead?
So critics, I've learned this over the year. I didn't start out with my term in office with this perspective, but really to understand the critics and understand their point of view is extremely important. Not because you want to be led by fear, or not because you've got to try to make everyone happy, but there's nuggets of truth out of criticism, and being able to extract those nuggets, to be self-aware, to try to find out, could I do better? Or is there a better perspective? I don't have all the answers. No one ever came down and said, a dove above my head and said, now you have all the answers, go and lead. It has to do with being open to be criticized, and then synthesizing from that what makes sense, but almost more importantly, understanding what doesn't make sense and not letting that hamper you. There's a lot of emotion in criticism, especially when you start talking social media. People get, in front of a screen, they don't necessarily think about, there's somebody on the other end of what they're saying. So it's extremely important to be able to take that criticism, take a deep breath, and say, okay, I'm not going to be driven by this emotionally driven criticism. I'm not saying it's not valid. I'm just saying it's not something that I'm going to let it steer me. Otherwise, you just go crazy, because you're going to get one way and then the other way in the next comment and back and forth. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's wise to ignore your critics. I think that's a mistake. I think it's wise to be discern from their comments what is applicable and then what is not.
Absolutely. Like you said, I don't think anyone ever approached a comment on social media saying, how could I most tactfully say this? And kind of digging through the muss and the fuss to try and find out, hey, what's the real issue? Like what is it that's driving them to say, you got to fix this. You need to fix this, or you handled this wrong. Like there's probably a hurt underneath. There's probably something that's at the heart of what they're trying to say. Just trying to read between those lines has got to be difficult.
Right. And so if there's something like that, I encourage them for more direct interaction. I mean, comments on social media, it's a one-way conversation. One-way conversations are never fruitful. So if there's something that I think I need more to dive into more, it's about, hey, can you message me, or maybe we can come in and have an appointment or a telephone call or something to work through. If I think there's something, we can work through.
Well, looking kind of ahead, because I know that this past couple of years has been rough, to say the least.
Yes.
What would be, if you have any goals or kind of things you're like, I can't wait to do this. What's next for Yuma? What's our next step?
Well, there's some long-term things that we are working on. I like to see some forward progress, at least in the near term on these. We have the multimodal center that we've been talking about for 20 some years in downtown. That's the Del Sol building, making that into something where, if you do want to take the train out of Yuma, you have a place to wait. The Greyhound bus interact with the local bus network, and into the downtown area. I believe those kind of things are what you see in larger growing communities. So we need to set ourselves up for that success. So that's one of them. The Yuma Multiversity Campus is another element that I think, as a growing community, we need to look at. If you go back in time 60 years, you're going to see some community members get together and really focus on AWC and its creation and its purpose in the community, and how that's going to take us into the future, and really what is that that we're missing that we need, and how can a community college provide that to our community. It's amazing that 60 years ago they did that, because we have an amazing institution now. So now for me, it's about looking for that next 50 years into the future and say, we need to have more robust higher education attainment. And that's not done through 2+2. It's 2+2 programs are, by definition, you're going out of town for the last 2 years. But I'll admit that 3 universities here have made some great strides in providing full 4-year degrees here, but we still have full programs. So if you're changing a degree, which as college age kids in my family, I've seen those degrees change, a couple times. It's possible that you're moving out of the city to finish that new degree, that new focus that you've taken on. Yuma is the 3rd largest metropolitan area in the state of Arizona. It needs to have a strong university presence that provides a holistic answer to our need for higher education. If you look statistically at the state, 26% of adults, now this is average over the whole state, not just Maricopa County, but the entire state, 26% of adults have a bachelor's degrees or higher. In Yuma County, it's 13%. It's half of the average for the state. Now, I believe our community is better than half the average of the state. I think, we're a great community. That's part of what's missing as far as how we step into the future, is raising that 13 to at least the average, but really there's no reason why we can't exceed that. So having a concerted effort to focus on that. Community college does a great job focusing on what their mission is. And I've got a lot of respect for Dr. Cord and all his staff. And I have a lot of respect for those that are currently offering programs from AWC, NAU, and ASU. I just want more of it. I think that's really what our community needs. Then the third thing that comes to mind is a spaceport. We've been moving forward on looking at launching rockets from Yuma County into low Earth orbit.
Very nice.
It will not be manned. You cannot buy a ticket.
Well, there go my weekend plans.
Yeah. I was disappointed too. But this would be for communication satellites, so small satellites to get them up into orbit. That part of the commercial space, if you would, is dramatically underserved. And this is the only place in the state of Arizona you can safely get a rocket up, meet all the FAA requirements, and into space, because will launch southerly into the Gulf. And so any faulty rockets will end up in the water. So moving that forward, I think is going to help change the landscape. And actually, it'll tie into the multiversity kind of effort too, but it'll be a statewide asset. It'll be something the whole state and the universities, as well as our aerospace industry in Arizona, can engage with and help us be a leader in the region. So not just in the United States, but even into Mexico. I've already reached out and have had some correspondence with the president of Mexico and about this idea, and they're on the table. They want to be at the table. They want to be part of that solution. So things like that are maybe a little bit out of the box. They might seem extravagant, but when you get down into the weeds, even the spaceport is not going to be one of these $100 million ventures that you see that are now sitting empty because of airspace control issues. This will be a very get it done. We've got work to do. We're not here for Hollywood. We're here for getting some work done. So those are the things that I guess come to mind as far as specific programs. Anytime we can attract jobs, that's always my focus. I think these three things help us do that. We need to be looking into the future on what kind of industries do we want in Yuma as ag becomes more automated. I don't see ag going away, but I see that workforce needing to shift. So how do we shift that? And hopefully it's ag tech. Hopefully it's aerospace manufacturing. It's those things that complement what we have in our assets that we can provide to the world.
That would be amazing.
That's exciting.
I know that when I worked in our hospitality field here, we have a lot of more like the Boeing and the folks who would work out like YPG and MCAS. I cannot imagine someone coming out here for like aerospace work. That would be amazing.
So actually, technically, it's already happened, and NASA has been out here for years testing the return module for the next rocket set that they're putting up for the astronauts, and they've been testing that out at YPG, and they've been staging at MCAS or actually at the Yuma International Airport. So this isn't like completely new ground, but launching something vertically. We did try that, I believe, it was in the 50s at a YPG, and they tried to do it out of a cannon, and they got to low Earth orbit, but I don't think it was survivable. Yeah. So anyway, it's something that I think does just takes Yuma out of the box that everyone else wants to put it in. We are a great community, and we have a lot of capabilities, and that's just one way to show it, I think.
I also want to ask, what's next for you? More mayorship, maybe moving into governor, senator?
Well, dinner short.
Sounds great.
Good answer.
Is what's next? I don't know. I'm currently sitting in an office where I got a lot of work. So I think focusing on that's extremely important. A lot of people ask this question, so you're not the first. I'm sure you're not going to be the last. I never thought I'd be mayor, to be honest. I mean, just to be frank between us, I don't remember if we talked about this during the first interview, but it wasn't a lifelong dream. It was kind of something I kind of fell into. So I suspect that'll be how the next, if anything, comes by, will probably be something similar. But I don't know. If this is the only thing I do in public life, I think I'll be happy.
I also wanted to ask, is there anything, if you could communicate one thing to humans everywhere, all those who watch our show, is there anything you'd want humans to know? Any message you'd have for them?
I think what's important is to remember that Yuma is theirs. I have the honor and the privilege of representing them in the roles that I get to represent, from international to national issues, to state issues, to local issues. It's a huge honor to represent the 100,000 plus people of Yuma. But at the end of the day, it's not mine only. Yeah, it's Yuma's. It's all the humans that live here, and it takes everyone to get involved. No one person can make anything happen. So get involved, find out what you're passionate about, and put your time in it, put your treasure in it, put your focus on it. That's, I think, how we grow a strong community. It's how we have grown a strong community over the years, is looking at everyone getting involved. You mentioned it earlier that when there's a need, everyone shows up. Okay. And I agree with you. And that's an amazing thing that we have in Yuma, but let's also do it before necessarily there's a need, but a direction we want to go as a community. So getting involved, that's the biggest thing. And what that means is going to mean something different to everybody, which is great. Maybe it's getting involved in your church. 100%. I mean, churches are part of the community. Let's go ahead and recognize that being heavily involved in your church is just as important as, involved in a Rotary Club or something like that. But find those things that you're passionate about that will take Yuma in a positive direction, and let's work on those together.
I think it's a great call to action. Just get
Absolutely.
involved. Just be a part of something bigger than ourselves.
Definitely.
Before we go, we hear you're a pretty big Godfather fan.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite, and I won't be the trilogies because I actually don't like the third
I was gonna say
One and two, right?
Is 1 and 2 is
one and to me that's the end of the series.
yeah.
I've read the book, so number 3 doesn't appear in the book anywhere. That was a Hollywood
fair.
add-on.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I feel like that's a general consensus too. It's like 1 and 2, yeah, 3.
So we have a new segment called What's That Moment, where we ask our guests, kind of obscure questions about either their favorite show or movie. So would you be up to answering some questions?
I'll give it a shot. I'll tell you, I'm not good at trivia, at least not movie trivia, but I'll give it a go. We'll see what happens.
First question is, who played the Godfather's son, Sonny Corleone, in The Godfather, actor-wise?
Oh. Yeah, I'm not going to come up with that name.
It's all good. James Caan.
Yeah.
You're like, sure, yeah, that was him.
Yeah,
I
was
saw him in the
impressed by
movie.
that. And at some level, I knew that, but I couldn't come up with the name. So, fair enough. Okay, I hope these get easier, not harder.
We'll see. Question number 2. In The Godfather, what favor did Vito grant Nazarene, the baker, during the wedding?
He was serving justice for the abuse of his daughter.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what happened because they don't really say.
Right. That's basically what it alludes to.
Yeah.
So.
It could have been a complete justice, although he does allude and say that that's not equal. That's not justice. That's revenge, which isn't the same thing.
Yeah.
See, I've watched
there.
decent on the concepts of the movies. The details are a little bit tougher.
That's all you need. Next question. Go ahead.
Who plays Hyman Roth in The Godfather Part 2?
Oh, geez.
I feel like we just slapped that one right off too.
Yeah. That's just like the James Caan one. I'm not going to come up with the name. I don't have a good name.
I'm probably going to mispronounce it. I think it's Lee Strasberg.
Yeah, that's what I would go with.
So let me ask you a question. What else has Lee Strasberg been in?
That's a
Other
good question.
movies.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't either. I don't know either. So
I told you they were obscure questions. Yeah.
definitely obscure. I was hoping for the cannoli question, but okay.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Maybe this one.
What was Captain McCluskey eating when Michael shot him in The Godfather?
It was, Was it Linguini or was it?
I'll give you a hint. A very quoted, I don't know if it's necessarily from The Godfather, but a very quoted phrase is, try the blank. It's delicious.
The veal.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
cutlets.
that's
It
it.
was veal cutlets. Yeah. Veal. So I'm part Italian, which is part of the reason I like part of The Godfather. But veal cutlets was something we didn't get very often. So sure enough, makes sense.
There you are.
Last question, and I think you get because you mentioned you read the books first. So the Godfather movies are based on, well, Godfathers 1 and 2 are based on which novel by which author?
I read them, just to be clarified, I read them like 30 years ago.
I've slept since then.
Right.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, that one's going to escape me too.
Mario Puzo.
That's right,
I think,
Mario
or
Puzo.
Puzo. I don't, maybe that's
Puzo. It's actually
Puzo.
Puzo.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, thanks so much for playing the game with us, Mr. Mayor.
So
for
the
being
only
on the
question I
show.
really prepared for was my favorite line, which is, do you know what the cannoli line is?
No.
I don't know.
Drop the gun, take the cannolis. That's after they offed the guy that snitched on them.
Oh.
You remember that in the
Drop
cornfield?
the gun, take the cannolis.
Drop the gun, take the. So
No,
that's awesome.
The younger henchman that was actually had to kill the person that was in violation, I guess, of the Familia order. They had stopped by for cannolis earlier, and he was so shaken after having killed the guy that they had to tell him, drop the gun. You're always supposed to drop the gun, evidently, and then take the cannolis, because you never leave good cannolis anywhere. and they came from New York, so those were good cannolis.
Oh, bet. Oh, man. Well, thanks for taking the time, Mr. Mayor,
We
for
appreciate
coming back on the show, checking in with us, and for your leadership. We appreciate it. And we hope that you and your family just take care of yourselves and enjoy as we start getting into cooler weather soon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate being on your show. You guys do a great program. I really enjoy watching your podcasts, and look forward to this one coming out. Although I generally don't watch things I'm in. It's just kind of like a rule. But staff tells me if it was good or if I did well or not. So that's helpful. But anyway, I really appreciate everything, and look forward to meeting up with you folks again.
Yeah,
Can do.
absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Well, take
Thank
care.
you. You too.